Welcome to History Explained, where we illuminate the past to better understand our present. I'm your guide on this journey through the past to empower the future. Today is Sunday, May 25, 2025. As we do every Friday, we're exploring pivotal economic milestones that have shaped our financial world. This week, we turn our attention to the economic events that unfolded between May 18 and May 24, 2025, a period marked by rising trade tensions, volatile markets, and major policy shifts reverberating across global economies. We begin in the United States, where President Donald Trump reignited trade tensions with a dramatic new proposal: a 50% tariff on all European Union goods, along with a 25% levy on imported smartphones. The announcement, citing stalled negotiations with EU leaders, sent shockwaves through financial markets. The Dow, Nasdaq, and S&P 500 all posted steep losses for the week. As shipping lanes continue to thin and port activity declines, the economic strain is being felt not just at the top of the supply chain, but at the checkout counter. U.S. importers, still digesting the effects of past trade battles, are now placing fewer orders due to unpredictability, bloated inventories, and the looming threat of retaliatory tariffs. History shows us that trade wars rarely yield clear winners. From the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act of 1930 to the U.S.-China dispute of the 2010s, protectionist policies often lead to inflation, slowed growth, and unintended geopolitical consequences. This week's developments are shaping up to follow a similar script. Across the Atlantic, the UK has taken a different approach. Prime Minister Keir Starmer's government secured 3 separate trade agreements this week, one each with the United States, India, and the European Union. While the deals are being welcomed by business leaders as a positive step forward, economists caution that their impact on GDP will likely be modest. The EU agreement, in particular, offers streamlined food and drink exports and the potential return of fast-track travel through EU e-gates. But it falls short of the deeper integration once enjoyed under the single market. Still, for a nation seeking to rebuild after the twin disruptions of Brexit and the COVID-19 pandemic, the symbolism matters. Trade has always been more than the exchange of goods. It is the fabric of diplomacy, and the foundation of soft power. In that sense, this week's agreements represent more than numbers. They represent intention. Turning now to South America, where Ecuador's President Daniel Noboa was officially sworn in for a full term. Noboa, the youngest leader in the country's modern history, had previously served out the final 18 months of his predecessor's mandate. In his inauguration speech, he pledged to confront the country's spiraling violence and rebuild its fragile economy. Since taking office, Noboa has deployed the military to crack down on organized crime, pushed through new penalties for drug and terrorism offenses, and signed a $4 billion deal with the International Monetary Fund to reduce the country's fiscal deficit. And yet, the challenges remain staggering. Ecuador's public debt stands at over 50% of GDP, oil revenues are declining, and the homicide rate has surged again in early 2025. His goal of 4% economic growth this year may be optimistic, but it signals a clear direction. For Ecuador, as in many developing nations, the fight against violence and the pursuit of prosperity are not separate. They are deeply intertwined. Back in the United States, the stock market faced a rollercoaster week. The tech-heavy Nasdaq fell by 2.5%, while the S&P 500 dropped by more than 2.5% as well. Contributing to this volatility were several converging factors: ongoing earnings reports, rising Treasury yields, and Moody's decision to downgrade the United States credit rating. At the same time, President Trump's tariff announcements added further uncertainty. Within the tech sector itself, new developments from Microsoft and Google pointed to the accelerating race in artificial intelligence. Microsoft unveiled its newest AI agent features, while Google introduced a search engine mode powered by generative AI. Apple, however, suffered a sharp decline in share price, dropping more than 7%, after OpenAI acquired a startup partially owned by Apple's former design chief, Jony Ive. The acquisition raised concerns about strategic overlap and competitive pressure. To make matters worse, President Trump threatened to impose a 25% tariff on all iPhones sold in the United States unless they are manufactured domestically. For a company deeply reliant on Chinese supply chains, that's not just a policy challenge, it's an existential one. All of these developments underscore one reality: the global economy is more interconnected than ever before. Trade decisions in Washington ripple through ports in Los Angeles. Tariffs aimed at Brussels cause currency shocks in Tokyo. A policy change in Quito can alter forecasts from the IMF in Geneva. And each decision, each agreement, each financial tremor builds upon a long and complicated legacy. That's why understanding history isn't just a matter of curiosity, it's a necessity. Because today's economy doesn't exist in a vacuum. It's part of a story we've been writing for generations. Thank you for joining us for this week's episode of History Explained. If this journey through economic milestones brought clarity or sparked new questions, be sure to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who's thinking about the future of finance. Up next, our Saturday episode, where we step onto the battlefield for a closer look at military history and its influence on global power. Until then, I'm your guide for History Explained, where understanding yesterday is the key to navigating tomorrow.